They want to hear, I understand, but I'm not waiting, because that sentence holds power. It carries calm instead of chaos, truth instead of tension, and it tells the avoidant exactly what their heart has always wanted to hear, but never believed they could. Those words are soft but strong. They don't beg, they don't chase, they don't demand. They simply acknowledge, I see you, I get it. I know why you pulled away. I know what scares you. And I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to make you stay, because I understand. But I've also learned that understanding someone doesn't mean waiting for them. It means respecting where they are without abandoning who you are. It means giving grace without losing self-respect. And that balance is what breaks their walls more than anything else ever could. When you say, I understand, but I'm not waiting, you speak from emotional maturity, from healing, from the kind of self-awareness that most people never reach. You're not angry anymore. You're not bitter. You're not holding on to resentment. You're holding peace. You're holding clarity. And that peace speaks to something deep inside them, because avoidants are used to being misunderstood. They're used to people reacting with anger or neediness or desperation. They're used to conflict, to questions, to blame. But they're not used to calm. They're not used to someone saying, I get you, and I release you. That's a kind of energy that melts their defenses, because it doesn't attack, it doesn't demand, it accepts. And acceptance is the very thing their entire soul craves, but has never learned how to receive. You see, when you stop chasing and you speak from calm understanding, you show them that you're no longer trapped in their emotional rhythm. You're not swinging between hope and rejection anymore. You've stepped outside of their storm, and now you're grounded. And grounded people have gravity. They pull others toward them without trying. And that's exactly what your peace does. It draws them in. Not because of guilt, not because of manipulation, but because calm energy is irresistible to someone who has lived their whole life running from chaos. They don't even understand why they feel pulled back. But it's because your words carry no pressure, no expectation, just truth. And truth is the one thing the avoidant can't run from forever. When you say, I understand, it tells them you've seen through the mask, you've looked past the defenses, you've recognized that their distance wasn't rejection, it was fear. And that simple awareness heals you both, because you no longer take their withdrawal personally, and they no longer have to hide behind excuses. You're freeing them without freeing them from accountability. You're saying, I get it, but I'm not here to carry your emotional baggage. I'm not here to teach you lessons through pain. I'm not waiting for you to realize my worth, because I've already realized it myself. And that's what makes the sentence powerful, because it's not passive. It's not dismissive. It's peaceful, and peace carries weight. It lingers, it echoes. It makes them think long after the conversation ends. For someone with an avoidant heart, nothing scares them more than dependency, but nothing touches them more than acceptance without attachment. And those words do exactly that. They disarm the fear. They remove the pressure. They let them feel seen without feeling trapped. They show them what unconditional understanding looks like. And that's what creates impact, because avoidants often come from environments where love was conditional, where closeness meant suffocation and distance meant safety. But when you say, I understand, but I'm not waiting, you're giving them a new experience, one where love exists without control, where connection doesn't come with demand, and that realization plants a seed in them that will grow long after you've stopped speaking. You're not saying, I don't care. You're saying, I care deeply, but not at the cost of my peace. You're saying, I wish you healing, but I won't shrink myself to be chosen by someone who's still running. You're saying, I'll always hold compassion, but compassion doesn't mean sacrifice, and love doesn't mean losing myself. You're saying, I've learned to love in a way that doesn't depend on being loved back. And that's what shakes them, because they're used to people either fighting for them or resenting them. But not many can release them with grace. And grace is what changes everything. Grace is what they remember, because grace feels like safety. And safety is what they've been searching for all along, but didn't know how to receive. When you speak those words, you're speaking from your higher self, from the version of you that's done healing through pain, that's done explaining. feelings to people who can't meet them. You're speaking from wholeness, from strength, from quiet confidence. You're saying, I see your fear, but it no longer controls mine. I see your avoidance, but it no longer hurts me. I see your silence, but it no longer defines me. Because I understand it's not about me. It never was. And that awareness gives you power, the kind of power that doesn't need to dominate. It simply radiates. And that radiance becomes your message, your peace becomes your proof, and your silence becomes your final word. Because you've said everything that needed to be said in one sentence that carries everything they need to feel compassion, closure, and calm. And that's what they secretly want to hear. Not I miss you, not I love you, not please come back, but I understand. I'm not angry. I'm not waiting. I wish you peace. Because those words remove guilt, they remove defense, they let them breathe, and they let you move forward. And that's what real love does. It doesn't chain, it frees, it doesn't chase, it releases, it doesn't prove, it trusts. And when you stand in that energy, when you speak from that space, when you embody that sentence, not as a line, but as a truth, that's when everything shifts. That's when they feel your absence as peace, not punishment. That's when they finally realize what they lost wasn't a person who needed them. It was someone who understood them, loved them, and still chose to let go. And that understanding, that calm, that freedom is what makes them feel something they can't resist because, for the first time, they've met someone who didn't need them to stay to be complete. They want to hear, you don't have to come back. I already found peace, because that sentence carries a truth that pierces straight through the walls they hide behind. It's calm, it's final, and it's powerful. Because when an avoidant leaves, they expect chaos. They expect pain. They expect tears and questions and endless chasing. They expect you to break so they don't have to face their own reflection. But when you say, you don't have to come back, I already found peace, if you take that script and burn it, you remove the emotional leverage they once held, and you show them something they've never felt before. Love that doesn't depend on presence, peace that doesn't need closure, strength that doesn't need to prove, and that kind of energy is what stuns them, because it's the one thing they never expected you to find without them. You see, avoidants walk away believing that time will dull your emotions, that eventually you'll still be there when they're ready. They count on your loyalty, on your attachment, on your patience. They convince themselves that they can leave and return when they've sorted through their fears. But the moment you let go, truly let go, not out of anger but acceptance, that illusion collapses and those words become the truth. They can't ignore. You don't have to come back. I already found peace. It's not a rejection. It's not revenge. It's freedom. It's the kind of freedom that says, I'm no longer tied to your absence. I'm no longer defined by your silence. I've made peace with your distance, and that peace is mine now, not something I borrowed from you. And that realization stirs something inside them, something deeper than guilt. It stirs regret, it stirs reflection, it stirs longing, because your peace becomes the mirror they never wanted to look into. When you say it without resentment, without trying to prove you've moved on. Because peace doesn't perform. It just exists. It's quiet. It's steady. It's unshakable. And that steadiness speaks volumes to someone who has only ever known instability. Avoidants run from emotions because they fear being consumed by them. But your calm shows them what emotional regulation actually looks like. It shows them that love doesn't have to be chaos, that endings don't have to be wars, that you can care without clinging. And in that truth lies the paradox. The calmer you are, the louder your absence becomes. The less you need them, the more they feel you. Because energy never lies. And when you find peace, it radiates, it vibrates, it travels. It reaches them even when you don't speak, and they can feel that you've let go. And that's when they finally start to feel the weight of what they lost. You don't say those words to hurt them. You say them because you've healed, because you've stopped waiting for someone to return and started walking toward yourself. You've stopped trying to fix someone else's avoidance and started understanding your own attachment. You've stopped needing closure because your peace became your closure. And now those words carry a vibration of freedom. They say, I wish you well. I hope you find your own calm. but I'm not tied to your journey anymore. And that tone, that stillness, that maturity is what draws them in. Because peace has a power that pain never will. Peace doesn't demand attention, it commands respect, and that's what they feel when they hear it. That's what echoes in their mind. Not the arguments, not the tears, not the chase, but the calm in your voice when you said, "You don't have to come back. I already found peace." Avoidants often return to check if the door is still open, if the energy is still the same, if you're still available. They come back to test your boundaries, not always to reconnect, but to see if they still have emotional influence. And when they come back and you respond with calm kindness, with serenity instead of reaction, with balance instead of begging, they don't know what to do with it because it's not what they expected. They were prepared for emotion, not composure. They were prepared for questions, not quiet. And that's why those words hold so much power, because you're not closing the door in anger. You're leaving it open in peace. And that's far more unsettling because it shows them that you've risen above the game. You're not competing. You're not seeking. You're simply being. And being is magnetic because it carries no fear, no control, no desperation, only peace. When you find peace, you stop chasing answers. You stop rewriting the story. You stop needing to know if they'll ever come back because you've realized something profound. That love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes love means letting go with grace. Sometimes love means saying goodbye without bitterness. Sometimes love means wishing them healing even if it's not with you. And that kind of love, that pure kind of acceptance, is what changes you. It's what frees you. And it's what makes them remember you differently. Because in a world full of emotional noise, your silence becomes unforgettable. Your calm becomes sacred. And your peace becomes their reminder that not all love ends in destruction. Some love ends in growth, and some growth begins with goodbye. You don't say it to prove strength. You say it because you are strength now. You've earned it. You've built it, piece by piece, through every sleepless night, through every unanswered message, through every moment of wondering why, and now you finally know. You were never supposed to wait for someone who couldn't meet you where you stood. You were supposed to rise, to expand, to evolve beyond the version of you that thought love was proven through endurance. Now you know love is proven through peace. And when you say, "You don't have to come back, I already found peace," what you're really saying is, "I've come back to myself." And that's the most powerful return of all. Because in the end, peace is not something they gave you. It's something you created. It's something you earned. It's something they'll feel long after they're gone. And maybe one day, they'll come back. Not because they have to, but because your peace reminds them of what real love feels like. Calm, grounded, unconditional. But even if they don't, you're free, you're whole, you're home within yourself. And that's the message they'll never forget. That you didn't need their return to be complete, that your peace became your closure, and your silence became your answer. Because those words, "You don't have to come back, I already found peace," will echo in their mind long after the chase ends, reminding them that the love they feared losing was the one that never tried to control them. It simply let them go and became stronger in the stillness that followed. They want to hear, "I still care, but I've let go," because those words carry a kind of maturity that hits deeper than any confession. It's not dramatic. It's not emotional manipulation. It's truth wrapped in peace. It's the kind of truth that avoidants don't expect because they're used to extremes. They're used to all or nothing. They're used to people who either hold on too tightly or cut them off completely. But when you say, "I still care, but I've let go," and you break that pattern, you show them something rare, something they can't categorize. You show them love that has evolved, love that has grown beyond attachment, love that doesn't beg to be returned, but still chooses to remain kind. And that level of emotional intelligence is something they can't forget because it touches the one part of them they've always kept hidden, the part that still wants to be loved, but doesn't know how to handle it. When you say, "I still care," you're not saying, "I'm waiting." You're not saying, "I'm weak." You're saying, "I'm human. I have feelings. I have compassion. But those feelings no longer control me. They no longer define my choices. I can care about you and still walk away. I can love you and still release you. I can wish you well and still protect my peace. Because letting go doesn't mean I stop feeling. It means I stop suffering. It means I stopped trying to change what was never mine to control. It means I stopped confusing attachment with love. And that distinction is what makes you powerful. Because avoidants have spent their lives running from love that demanded too much. But when you show love that asks for nothing, it disarms them. It softens them. It reaches the part of them that believes love always costs freedom. And in your calm, they start to see that it doesn't have to. They're not used to someone saying, I still care, without it coming with conditions, without it being tied to expectation. They're used to love as leverage, as proof, as performance. But your peace teaches them something new, that real care doesn't fade with distance. It just detaches from outcome. It becomes silent, steady, mature. It becomes something they can't shake off because it doesn't chase them, it follows them quietly in their thoughts. It lingers in the spaces where their guilt lives because it's not angry, and that's what makes it powerful. Anger gives them permission to feel justified, but peace takes that permission away. Peace makes them look inward. Peace makes them wonder why someone who still cares could let go so easily. And that question stays with them long after you've stopped speaking. When you say those words, you're not seeking closure. You've already found it. You're not reopening old wounds. You're simply acknowledging that you've healed enough to look at them without breaking. You're acknowledging that love didn't destroy you. It grew you. It expanded you. It taught you where your boundaries begin and where your peace resides. You're acknowledging that you've learned how to hold love without needing to hold the person. And that's what makes your care different. It's not driven by need. It's rooted in strength. And that strength is magnetic. Because most people confuse indifference with healing. But true healing doesn't mean indifference. It means peace in the presence of what once hurt you. It means being able to say, I still care, but I've let go, and actually mean it from your soul. Avoidants spend their lives fearing love because love has always come with pressure. But when they feel your energy, when they feel that you can love them without needing them, they start to see love differently. They start to understand that care doesn't have to mean captivity. And that realization begins to change them slowly, silently. Because for the first time, they've met someone who could love them and release them at the same time, who could see their flaws and not use them as weapons, who could still wish them peace even after being hurt, and that energy speaks to them more than any I love you ever could. Because it's real. It's not about possession, it's about compassion. And compassion is something even the most guarded heart can't resist. You don't say it to prove you're over them. You say it because you've reached a place of balance. You say it because your healing isn't dependent on their response anymore. You say it because the love you once gave to them, you've now redirected toward yourself. And that's why your words sound different. That's why your energy feels different. You're no longer trying to convince anyone of your worth. You're living it. You're breathing it. You're showing it in how calmly you move through life, how softly you speak, how peacefully you carry yourself. You're no longer in pieces. You're whole. And that wholeness doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from forgiving, from understanding, from releasing. And when you say, I still care, but I've let go, it's not for them. It's for you. It's the final act of freedom. It's the end of the story, told with grace instead of grief. Because letting go while still caring is the ultimate form of love. It's selfless. It's unconditional. It's love without fear, without control, without expectation. And that's the kind of love that changes people. That's the kind of love that makes avoidants rethink everything they've believed about connection. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's gentle. It's sincere. And that sincerity stays with them. It shows them that love doesn't have to be painful to be real. That you can hold someone in your heart even as you walk away. That you can forgive without forgetting who you are. And that lesson, that feeling, that peace becomes unforgettable. Because it's not about proving, it's about being. And you are being love in its purest form, detached but not disconnected. Strong but not cold. Healed but still human. And that's what they secretly want to hear. That you still care but you've let go. Because it tells them they mattered. It tells them they were loved. Also tells them you won't be waiting, you won't be chasing, you won't be losing yourself again. And that truth hits deeper than any declaration of love ever could. Because it's real, it's grounded, it's balanced. It's everything they never knew they needed to feel. And even if they never say it, they'll remember it, they'll feel it, they'll carry it. Because when someone says, I still care, but I've let go, they're not just releasing the person, they're releasing the pain. They're releasing the past. And that's the moment love transforms from a wound into wisdom, and peace becomes the only thing left between you. They want to hear nothing and feel everything, because silence says what words never could. Silence is what an avoidant understands the most. It's their language. It's their comfort. It's what they use to create distance. But when it's finally used against them, not in bitterness, but in peace, it becomes the very thing that wakes them up. Because they were always prepared to handle confrontation. They were ready to handle tears, arguments, pleading, explanations. They knew how to control those situations. But what they never expected was your silence, your stillness, your complete absence of effort. That's what shakes them. That's what makes them feel something they can't explain, because silence doesn't ask for attention. It demands reflection. It makes them sit with what they've done. It makes them face the emptiness they created. And for someone who has spent a lifetime avoiding emotion, silence becomes the mirror they can't turn away from. When you stop speaking, they finally start to listen, not to you, but to themselves, to their guilt, to their regret, to their confusion, to their heart that they've ignored for years. Because silence doesn't give them something to push against. It doesn't give them a reason to defend. It doesn't give them a way to escape through logic or distraction. It forces them to feel, and that's what avoidants fear most, feeling. But it's also what they crave the most. Connection in silence becomes that bridge between the two. It's the moment they start realizing that your presence was never the problem. It was their fear of losing control that made them run. And now your silence exposes that truth without ever saying a word. Because silence carries a weight that echoes louder than any conversation. It speaks in the space between what was said and what was never said. And that's where they finally feel the loss. They feel it when they wake up and there's no message from you. They feel it when they scroll through old texts and see that the thread has ended. They feel it when they look for the familiar energy that used to chase them and realize it's gone. Because your silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. It's the presence of peace, of self-respect, of boundaries, of acceptance, and that energy lingers. It follows them in quiet moments. It whispers reminders of what they once had, what they took for granted, what they dismissed. And now it's too late to reach out, because your silence has built a wall stronger than any words ever could. Not a wall of anger, but a wall of calm, finality. And that calmness confuses them, because they don't know how to navigate peace. They don't know how to approach someone who isn't reactive, because reaction was the rhythm they understood. But your silence has rewritten the rhythm entirely. They start to remember the sound of your voice, the way you cared, the way you showed up, and they compare it to the silence now. And the contrast hits them harder than you think, because silence amplifies everything. It makes your absence feel heavier, it makes your energy feel deeper, and it forces them to recognize what they ignored when they had it. Your silence becomes their teacher. It teaches them what words could not. That love is not infinite when it's not, it's respected. That attention is not guaranteed when it's not reciprocated. That presence is not permanent when it's not valued. And those lessons echo in their mind long after the sound of your voice has faded. Because silence is not a punishment, it's a consequence. It's what happens when someone mistakes unconditional love for endless availability. You don't have to announce your silence. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it, because silence is self-explanatory. It's the voice of peace. It's the language of strength. It's the mark of healing. And it's the boundary that speaks for you when you no longer wish to repeat yourself. Because silence doesn't mean indifference. It means you've said all you needed to say. You've tried, you've cared, you've given, and now you're done explaining your worth to someone who could never hear it. Your silence is the evidence of growth. It's what happens when love evolves from needing to be seen. to simply being content with being understood by yourself. And that quiet energy has more power than any declaration of love ever could, because it carries the weight of truth, the strength of detachment, and the serenity of acceptance. Avoidants think silence is their weapon. They think pulling away gives them control. But when you match their silence not out of spite but out of peace, it disarms them completely. Because now they can't tell if you're waiting, if you've moved on, if you still care. They can't predict you. And unpredictability makes them feel something they've never felt before. It makes them curious. It makes them anxious. It makes them aware. And awareness is the first step toward transformation. Your silence becomes their wake-up call. It tells them you've stopped chasing, you've stopped over-explaining, you've stopped feeding their ego, you've stopped needing closure because you've created it yourself. And that energy is magnetic. It pulls them back in without you lifting a finger. Because silence creates a void, and that void is where realization begins. They'll replay moments. They'll remember your tone, your laughter, your kindness, and they'll start to realize that your silence isn't anger. It's evolution. You've changed frequencies. You've shifted from trying to prove love to embodying it. You've stopped needing to be chosen because you've chosen yourself. And that's when your silence starts to echo in them as guilt, as longing, as awareness. Because they can't fix what's already healed, they can't chase what's already still, and they can't control what's already free. Your silence becomes your statement, your peace becomes your punctuation, and together they say everything that words never could. They say, I've let go without hate, I've moved on without noise, I've found peace without permission, and that message reaches them without you having to deliver it. Because silence travels through energy, through memory, through time. And that's what they secretly want to hear. Nothing. Because in your silence, they finally feel the truth. They finally feel the love that was real, the loss that was deserved, the calm that replaced the chaos. They finally feel what you tried to express through words, but couldn't. They feel your detachment, your peace, your growth. And they realize that your silence wasn't the absence of emotion, it was the presence of self-worth. And that's what they'll remember. Not the conversations, not the arguments, not the goodbyes, but the quiet that followed. The quiet that spoke louder than any I love you ever could. The quiet that said, I cared enough to let you go, and I respect myself enough not to return. And in that quiet truth, they finally feel everything they tried to avoid, everything they thought they could escape. And that's why silence will always be the one thing they can't forget. Because silence is the sound of your power.